Keddie, California. It's just a small place, a resort town, or what used to be a resort town. People went there for nature, for peace. But one night in 1981, peace went away. It's forever. It left a stain, a dark mark that never really faded. The Keddie Cabin murders. It's 4 people dead, or 3 dead and 1 missing who was found later. A whole family. It's a story that still chills people even all these years later, and part of what makes it so awful is the feeling that something went really, really wrong with how it was handled. People wondered, did someone in power, maybe even the sheriff, help the killers get away? It's a heavy thought, it's a scary thought, it makes you question everything. Cabin 28. That's where it all happened. It was early on a Saturday morning, April 11th, 1981. A couple of teenage girls, one of them Sheila Sharp, the daughter of the woman who lived there, Sue Sharp. Sheila had been staying at a neighbor's cabin. She walked back to her own cabin that morning. The door was open. That was odd. She went inside, and that's when she saw it, the scene of absolute horror. Her mother, Sue Sharp, was dead. Her brother, John Sharp, was dead. And a friend of John's, Dana Wingate, was dead too. They were all bound, tied up, stop-ed, beaten. It was beyond brutal. And then Sheila noticed something else. Her little sister, Tina Sharp, who was 12 years old, was gone. Just gone. The air must have been thick with fear, with shock. What do you even do when you see something like that? The police got there, the Plumas County Sheriff's Office. This was a huge deal for a small town like Keddie. Nothing like this ever happened there. Not ever. You'd think they would be all over it. Every single piece of evidence, every single lead. But that's where the questions start. That's where the seeds of doubt were planted. Almost right away, things felt off. Like, they weren't doing everything they should. Like, they missed things. Big things. Think about it. A crime scene that horrific. You need to lock it down tight. You need to be super careful. But reports say the scene wasn't handled right. Because evidence wasn't collected properly. People walked through. It got messy. It makes you wonder. How could something so important be messed up so badly? It wasn't a big city police department with endless resources, sure. But still, this was a quadruple murder, or what looked like it. You'd expect the best they had. But what they got, or what people saw, didn't feel like the best. It felt like a mess. And then there's the missing girl, Tina. Her body wasn't found for 3 years. 3 years. It was found miles away near Feather Falls. That's a long time. People searched. But was the search good enough? Did they really put all their effort into finding her right away? Or was that also part of the problem? If the scene was mishandled, if leads were missed, if the search for Tina wasn't thorough, then right from the start, the whole investigation was on shaky ground. And when an investigation is on shaky ground, it makes people ask, why? Was it just incompetent? Or was there something more? Something darker? Soon enough, some names started to pop up. Marty Smart. He was Sue Sharp's ex-husband. He lived in another cabin at the resort, Cabin 26, just a short walk away. And then there was Bo Bubede, a drifter, a friend of Marty's, a man with a criminal past who was staying with Marty at the time. These two became key suspects. They had motive, or at least a connection. Marty and Sue had a rocky relationship. There were arguments, there was bad blood, and Bo Bubede was a tough guy, a guy who had been in trouble before. He wasn't the kind of person you'd want to cross. But the sheriff's office, under Sheriff Doug Thomas, seemed to drag its feet with these guys. Or at least, that's what people started to feel. People in town knew Marty. He wasn't some stranger, he was right there, but the focus didn't seem to land on him and Bo as hard as it should have, at least not initially, or not enough to get an arrest. It was like they were looking in other directions, or not looking hard enough in the right direction. And that's where the whispers began, the whispers about whether someone was protecting someone. Whether the sheriff or people in the sheriff's office had reason to look away. Years went by, the case went cold. Tina's body was found, but it didn't really open up the case any further, not in a way that led to arrest. The families were devastated, they lived with this huge open wound, and the town lived with the shadow of Keddie. Everyone knew about it, everyone talked about it, or tried not to. The questions never went away. They just got louder in people's heads. What happened, and why wasn't anyone ever charged? Then, decades later, a new set of eyes looked at the case. A new investigator, Mike Gamberg. He was a Plumas County Sheriff's detective. He started digging, and what he found made a lot of people angry. It made people realize those old whispers, those old doubts weren't just rumors. They had real weight. Gamberg found a lot of what people suspected things had been mishandled from the start. Evidence was lost, or ignored. He found a hammer, a specific type of hammer. This hammer was important, it was mentioned in the original investigation, but it went missing. Then Gamberg found it again. In an old evidence box, this hammer had a bloodstain on it, a dark, dried bloodstain. It was a tool that could have been used in the murders, and it had been sitting there, forgotten for decades. Just think about that. A key piece of evidence, just gathering dust. What does that say about the original investigation? And it wasn't just the hammer. Gamberg talked to people again, he re-interviewed witnesses, he looked at old files, and he started to build a picture, a much clearer picture of what might have happened. And the picture involved Marty Smart and Bo Bubede, but it also involved the way the sheriff's office under Doug Thomas had handled things. One of the most important pieces of information came from a tape recording. It was a conversation between Marty Smart and a friend. On this tape, Marty talks about the night of the murders. He talks about going to Cabin 28, he talks about Bo Bubede, and in this recording, he suggests that Sheriff Doug Thomas knew what was going on. He didn't say it in a way that was a direct confession to the murders, but it implied knowledge. It implied the sheriff was aware of things. That's a huge accusation. It's not just incompetence anymore. It's something much more serious. Marty Smart died in 2000. Bo Bubede died in 1988. They never faced justice for Keddie. But the questions about their involvement and the sheriff's role in letting them get away kept growing. Let's talk about Justin Smart. He was Marty Smart's son. He was a teenager at the time of the murders. He was in Cabin 28 that night, but he was in a different bedroom. He said he slept through the whole thing. But years later, he started telling a different story. He claimed he saw some things. He said he saw his father Marty and Bo Bubede along with another man, Don Bullen, in the cabin that night. He talked about them attacking the victims. He described how they moved the bodies. This was a shocking account, but Justin's story changed over time. He was a troubled kid, and that made his testimony difficult. People questioned his reliability, but even with the changes, the core of his story implicated Marty and Bo. And if Justin saw something, why didn't the original investigators push harder? Why didn't they follow up on his accounts more rigorously? Some say they did, but they just couldn't make it stick. Others say they simply didn't want to. The idea that a sheriff, someone whose job it is to uphold the law and protect people, would help killers escape is a really hard pill to swallow. It feels like a betrayal. But in small towns, things can be complicated. People know each other. They have histories. Relationships can blur lines. Doug Thomas was the sheriff. He was a respected figure. But did he have a blind spot? Did he have connections that made him hesitate? Or was it something worse? The new investigators, Mike Gamberg and others, they believe the sheriff's office under Thomas did mishandle the case. They believe that important evidence was overlooked and that leads involving Marty Smart and Bo Bubede were not pursued aggressively enough. They believe that it was more than just simple mistakes. It was almost like there was a deliberate effort to keep things quiet or to, look the other way. Think about the atmosphere in a small town. When something so horrific happens, there's panic. There's fear. There's also a desire to get things back to normal, to reassure people. Maybe the thinking was, let's not stir things up too much, or let's not make accusations against people we know, people who are part of our community. It's not an excuse for allowing murderers to go free, but it's one way to understand how a cover-up, or at least a massive screw-up, might happen. Evidence was not secured. This is basic police work. If it's messed up from the start, everything else becomes harder. A knife found near the resort later, which some believe was the murder weapon, wasn't properly handled or connected to the case by the original team. It feels like a pattern. 3. Failure to pursue key suspects Marty Smart and Bo Bubede were right there. They had motive, they had a history, but no arrests were made. Some sources say Marty even confessed to a therapist, and that the therapist reported it, but it was not fully acted upon by the sheriff's department. That's a staggering claim. First 4, the tape recording. The recording of Marty Smart mentioning the sheriff knowing things. It's not a clear-cut confession, but it strongly suggests the sheriff had knowledge of the crime and the people involved. Why would Marty say that if there wasn't some truth to it? 5. Small-town politics and relationships. This is the harder, more speculative part. But in small towns, the sheriff is a powerful figure. He knows everyone. Everyone knows him. Did Thomas have personal relationships or other reasons to avoid a full-scale pursuit of certain individuals? Was there pressure from someone else to keep quiet? We don't know for sure, but it's a question that hangs over the case. The new investigation, led by Mike Gamberg, along with Josh DeKeer, who came into the Plumas County Sheriff's Office in 2013 and took on the case, has breathed new life into the Keddie murder. They went back to basics, they looked at the evidence, they talked to people again, and they came to believe that the original investigation was deeply flawed, possibly intentionally so. They believe Marty Smart and Bo Bubede were the killers, and they believe the evidence was there, or should have been there, to prove it, if only it had been properly handled. It's important to remember that Sheriff Doug Thomas maintained his innocence regarding any wrongdoing. He always denied any cover-up. He said his office did the best they could with the resources they had at the time. He said that a cold case often gets re-examined years later with new insights and technologies, and it's easy to criticize past effort. And that's fair to consider. Maybe it was just a terrible, terrible run of incompetence. Maybe it wasn't malicious, but the sheer number of apparent mistakes, the lost evidence, the ignored leads, it all adds up to a very suspicious picture. What makes this idea of a sheriff helping the killers so powerful is that it undermines the very foundation of trust in law enforcement. We rely on these people to protect us, to bring criminals to justice. If they don't do that, if they actively hinder justice, then what does that say about our society? It's a dark thought, and it leaves a deep scar. The Keddie case isn't just about the murders anymore. It's about a small town's trust being broken. It's about a family's justice being denied. And it's about the unsettling possibility that the system designed to protect us, in this one instance, failed in the most spectacular and heartbreaking way. The new investigators have had some success. They found the hammer, they identified blood on it. They are working to connect it definitively to the crime and the suspects. They've found a new resolve to solve this case, even after all these years. But so much time has passed. Witnesses have died. Memories have faded. The crucial initial steps were missed. And it makes you wonder if they will ever truly get all the answers. Did a sheriff help the Keddie Cabin killers escape? It's not a simple yes or no. No one has been convicted of obstructing justice in this way. But the evidence that has emerged over the decades, the lost pieces, the ignored leads, the specific accusations from people close to the case, all point to a very strong possibility that the initial investigation was severely compromised. And the implication, for many, is that it was compromised by someone in a position of power. Someone who should have been leading the charge for justice, not standing in its way. The people who live in Keddie, or who remember that time, they still talk about it. They still feel the chill. They still carry the weight of what happened, and they still want to know the truth. They want to know why this horrific crime was never solved, and they want to know if the very people sworn to protect them were part of the problem. It's a tragedy, pure and simple, a tragedy made worse by the lingering feeling of betrayal. And that's why the Keddie Cabin murders and the questions surrounding the sheriff's role continue to haunt us all.